Welcome to Tech Talks, Evolving Distribution. I'm Corey Hayes, and with me is Bill Rosado. Today, we're exploring how digital transformation is reshaping the distribution industry.
That's right. From e-commerce platforms to CRM tools, we talk with industry experts about how distribution can embrace these changes and thrive in the ever-changing space.
Whether you're just getting started or looking for new insights, we've got you covered. Today's episode is packed with information to help you navigate the digital shift.
So let the tech talk begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tech Talks. Corey Hayes, your host here, alongside Bill Rosado. And we're excited to have a conversation today about invoice payments. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. But before we do that, Bill, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderful, Corey. I think this is a great topic to talk about. There's a little bit of a buzz out there. As a matter of fact, I think the last time I saw it said like only 30% of distributors have actually tackled this digital transformation as far as how to automate invoice payments, allow their customers to easily pay. So that means there's like 70% of you out there, right, that are tuning in because this is something that you're looking for, that you want some information on, and you're trying to make a decision on how to make it work.
Yeah, and before I get into these questions and we start building a conversation, I guess just let me ask you from a personal standpoint, how long have you been helping companies get invoice payment solutions in place, and what has that journey looked like for you?
Yeah, so that'd be over the last 3.5 years, really talking to customers that were struggling with how much time they spent right in this space, manually trying to process ACH and credit cards. People mailing in checks and having to go to the bank, and how can we shorten that time and make this a whole lot easier on their team to free them up to do other things than to be worried about just chasing down invoice payments.
Yeah, and I think, to add to that, I'm going on 2 years now of kind of being in this space, and I think it's been interesting because I've been a little bit on both sides of the coin, coming from an implementations role and onboarding role where I've seen the actual, client side of getting that integration piece set up, getting the functionality set up, getting that in place where you want, and really working on the technical pieces of it. And then now being in more of, the account executive role where seeing what prospects are looking for, things that they feel are headaches and pains that they're encountering just in their everyday life, and then presenting a solution to them. So I feel like I've got a little bit just maybe a unique perspective when it comes to this particular solution and what makes a good digital shift into invoice payments looks like. So to ask you the question and get the ball rolling on the conversation, generally speaking, and you talk at a high level about this, what challenges have you seen when a company goes to roll out an invoice payments solution, a digital invoice payment solution?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of challenges that get in the way of these projects and make them not successful, even when people have gone live. But I can think of three specifically that are kind of core challenges. And the first one, and you've probably heard this in a lot of different other episodes that we have, but it's just change management. Uh, People have always done it the way they always have. And truthfully, that's the way grandpa and that's the way dad did it. So we're going to continue to do it that way. But what we see in this space is things are changing, right? Not just internally in your company, but things are changing externally with your customers, and they have higher expectations, right? They don't want to do it always the way it was. But that change management, the changing of the guard, the changing of processes, right? Can be a real barrier for people.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that a fair amount of times too, right? Well, this has worked. Why fix what isn't broken? And the reality of the situation is, and just to speak firmly and honestly, is your competitors are changing. Your competitors are going digital with invoice payments and with other solutions in place. Um, right now, it may not feel like it's broken, but when your competitors start getting faster and they start giving their customers an ease of experience, it's something that doesn't feel broken can get broken really quick, and become a hurdle and become a problem. So, uh, as much as it may not feel good to hear, yeah, your competitors are changing.
Yeah, I think you're dead on, and which would kind of leads into the next one, right? It is a true ERP integration can be a roadblock.
Yeah.
So it depends on what ERP that you're on, right? Is if your ERP even has the capability of a third party solution to be able to do this, or they have a limited solution within their ERP. And really, when I say ERP integration, I've seen and heard many solutions where you're having to still manually push and pull data. You really need an ERP integration, and where we see the challenges are, right, that is a true integration where you're not having to still manually do pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'd add to this, and maybe circle back in this later in our conversation, but is when you are looking for a solution and when you are having conversations and you're in that discovery process, if you hear somebody saying the words, "Well, we could do that. Well, we might be able to make that work," or you're hearing, "Well, we could build the customization." If you're hearing that over and over and over again, there's probably reason for concern because that doesn't give the impression that there is a set, proven level of deep integration in place. That's the one thing that I would think that, you would really want to have, in that integration is a tried and proven solution that's in place.
And when you see like an ERP integration that's not deeply, where the roadblock comes, right, it's not that you don't go live, it's in the adoption internally, right, of people
Yep,
using it. Because what they find is that they're still doing manual processes. So they lean back to change management. What we've
yep,
always done, it was easier, right? Because this isn't a true integration.
yeah, that's a great point.
The final third core that I see as far as obstacles that come about is really just not understanding the return on investment. I don't know that all organizations understand how much time is spent chasing down getting invoices paid. It probably is a great question right now to go back and ask the question. I don't know how
Yeah.
many times I've had that conversation like, well, I don't know if how much time they really spend on that. And then they're overwhelmed when they find out like Susie's spending 4 hours a day trying to get invoices paid when
Yeah.
it could be something that could be automated, right? Rather than a manual process of looking up to see what invoices are due this week or what invoices are 30 days past due.
Yeah, it kind of amazes me the amount of times I've heard, "Well, oh, we just can't afford that. Well, we can't afford that solution." And it's like, "Well, you're affording, somebody to do this. You're affording their paycheck, and they're 3 times more expensive than what the actual, automated solution would be if you decided to roll that out." So it's interesting just to hear people's perspective, and kind of get an understanding on what their ROI around an invoice payment solution, what their expectations should be, and then actually comparing that with reality. And I think that that's always a really interesting part of the conversation where you allow for a space for honest self-reflection and looking at, what are we doing the best that we actually could be doing? Are we spending time where we should be spending time? And if we had time freed up, what would we spend our time on? What else could we do? What could we build value around, getting this certain solution in place? So, yeah, I think that leads into our really building, what the problems we've seen, and the reasons that people hesitate when it comes to finding a solution. I think we're getting into a place where we can build what success looks like, and really maybe help somebody understand why they should consider a digital invoice payment solution for their business. If you could speak to a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of things that makes what success looks like.
Yeah.
This probably is one of the most overlooked digital transformations that people kind of put on the back burner, but that probably should be pushed to the front because success is the impact it has on the business, right?
Mm.
It's a very powerful tool. Invoice payments online just it is such a powerful tool, and it makes a huge impact for businesses, large or small, right? It doesn't really matter the size.
Yeah. Yeah. I would 100% agree with that. I think it's interesting, where there are some solutions in place, and just to talk about this, just generally speaking, there are some solutions in place that want to dip their toe in a fee. They're going to however many transactions you do, whatever money you do per month per transaction or whatever, they're going to want to get a piece of that. And then there's some solutions in place that just say, we're going to do a flat rate and we want you to go do as much as you can do. So when you're considering the size of your business and you're considering how much you're doing an invoice payment, this invoice payments a month, that might be something to consider. What exactly are you going to expect with a solution in place when it comes to how they're going to charge you and what you're going to be paying them? So,
I think also when we're talking about success, right, is really finding a solution that's easy to use on both sides, right? Easy to use internally, right, for your AR team, but then externally, something that's very easy, has a great user experience for your customer. But then it has to be highly secure, right? On both sides, you want it to be highly secure. But the last thing is it just has to be scalable, right? It has to be something that if you're collecting 100 invoice payments a day, or if you're collecting 100,000 a month, right? Something that can scale with your business so that as you grow, right, it's a solution that will grow with you and with your
right.
team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even though there might be some feels like, pain in the beginning of changing, kind of going back to what you were saying about change management. Um, Understand that, when you go into a digital shift and you're transforming these things, you're setting yourself up. You should be setting yourself up for the long term, right? That's the whole goal. Is we want to get into this digital marketplace. We want to get into this digital space to where um, our company is rooted in serving our customers and helping and make our customers' lives easier and making their tools that are at their fingertips more understandable, having a good UI. And those things, even though they might seem simple and rudimentary, when you're in your discovery process, that's really what's going to be important to your customers. Is it easy to understand? Is it easy to navigate? Is it easy to find what I'm looking for? And that's the kind of thing that's going to make it scalable. Because if it's easy for them, they're going to love it. They're going to come back. They're going to love your company. They're going to love you for it. So finding a solution that's just really relatable with your customer base.
Oh, I agree. And so not just finding that solution that's going to streamline the payment process for your customer, but also to find that one that's going to really shorten that time from when you send that quote
Yeah.
to when you actually have cash in the bank, right? Going from quote to cash the quickest, finding that solution that's going to help you, right? I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have a digital solution, if you're doing it manually, that's not the quickest, right? That you're going to
Right.
go from a quote to they get an invoice, they get the solution, and then they got to mail you a check, and you're waiting on that, or you're waiting for somebody to call in and give you a credit card. You need something that's secure and it's really just going to change that timeline of going from a quote to cash in the bank.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the kind of just to round the conversation out, we probably have already touched on some of this, and maybe just to kind of recap the conversation, what are some things that you would offer as advice to somebody that doesn't have an invoice payment solution? Maybe they had never had one in place before, and they're really just looking to take that first step. What are some things that they should keep in mind through that process?
Well, I mean, I think that the biggest thing is ERP integration. I know we've probably
Mhm.
said it a couple different times. You probably hear that as a theme all the way through the podcast that we talk about. But that ERP is the point of truth. And you need to have somebody that has a deep integration and understanding, not just of distribution in your business, but to understand your ERP. And I think you said it earlier, Corey, or kind of touched on it, right? Not what we could do, right? But actually what we do, right? You
Yeah.
need to find a solution that does what you're asking it to do, not something that they're going to try to build out and eventually get set up for you.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of truth and power into that when you have somebody that has done it for a while, that understands the ins and outs of it and can really help get you in the right direction because you're talking about a project that maybe you don't have your arms around, that maybe you're a little bit lost in the wind. So you need somebody that is rooted, that has a good foundation underneath their feet, that understands the project and is willing to help you out through the process and willing to partner with you in that process. The other piece that I could think about being in the onboarding and implementation role that I was in is it's a double-edged sword when it comes to invoice payments, right? The ERP integration being the first one, and then the other side of that is having a good payment processor and gateway in place. I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody come to the table with a really, I hate to say it this way, but kind of a cheap version of a processor or gateway, and then they get frustrated because of the limited capability and functionality that that processor and that gateway has, and it really has nothing to do with your ERP. It really has nothing to do with the solution that you're on. But there's just a lot of limitation when it comes to the payment processor and the payment gateway, and tying it back to what you said about security, because that's what is going to be that key piece to make sure that the payments are secure. Credit cards, ACH things like that are really secure, and making sure that it's quick, it's painless, seamless, it's easy to make that to get those payments in. So that's the other piece that I would say, you know, take time and consider who your payment processor is, who your payment gateway is going to be. There's some really good ones out there, and then there's some really bad ones out there too that can make everything a headache. So do your homework on that and find what's most important to you. And then once you got that in place, stick with it and make that change happen, because you're gonna be the driver that drives change in your business, and buy into it and create that culture. And it's going to, in the long run, make your life easier, make your customers' lives easier, and they're going to want to keep coming back to you because you're making their life easier. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Any other tips, tricks that you have, Bill?
Well, just kind of to piggyback on what you're saying there too. Just because you have a gateway and a processor that is integrated into your ERP that you use them for other places in your business doesn't mean that you don't have to look for another one that might do more than what it does, right? Because
Right.
you might be driven by your ERP on what processor, credit card processor you're using, but they might not have the ACH capability. The other two, to kind of piggyback on that too, is as far as when I'm looking for a solution, I'd be wary of a solution that says this is the only gateway and processor,
Yeah.
um, because maybe there's something in it for them, right? As far as picking that out, and doesn't mean it's what's best for you. So I'd kind of look at that too, right? And be a little buyer beware, right? Of picking a solution where they're dictating that this is the only option that you have, rather than find a solution that gives you multiple options and allows you to decide what's best for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of questions that I get that ties into that is about, fee management, the convenience fees and things like that. You know, finding a solution that will also be flexible and help you navigate that as well to what fits best for you. Because everybody does that a little bit differently, whether it's a percentage, whether it's a flat fee, that kind of thing. If you can find a solution that will allow you to tailor it to, what your customers have expected in the past, and not sell you on, hey, this is what it has to be. I think that's another important piece about it. And I like that you bring that up. Like, finding a solution that is tried, is true, that has a deep level of integration, but is also willing to allow you to be flexible to what works best for your company and what works best for your customers, for sure. So, um, call it a shameless plug if you want to, but I will say, if you are interested in exploring this conversation more and learning a little bit more about invoice payments, and what that would look like for your business, I would invite you to reach out to Bill or myself, at Aldrich Web Solutions. We would love to explore that conversation more with you and see if there's a good fit. Bill, any final thoughts?
No, yeah, I say, yeah, please reach out, right? If you have e-commerce with us, I mean, this is a solution that we can add to your e-commerce. If you don't, right, we have a standalone. So if you're just looking to add a standalone invoice payment to your tech stack, right, we're here to help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, even if you don't want more information on invoice payments, feel free to be a part of the conversation, the bigger conversation that's going on at Tech Talks. Join our LinkedIn page, subscribe to our YouTube page. Let us know what you think of the conversation and be a part of the conversation. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. So let us know. And we're looking forward to the next time we get together here at Tech Talks. Thank you. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Tech Talks Evolving Distribution. Thanks for tuning in.
And we hope you've gained some valuable insights on how to embrace digital transformation and stay ahead in the distribution industry.
A special thanks to our sponsor, Aldrich Web Solutions, for supporting this podcast. With over 20 years of experience, they've been helping distributors win online and maximize their digital presence. Be sure to check them out if you're ready to take your business to the next level.
And if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. And of course, share this with anyone who could benefit from this conversation.
We'll be back next time with more expert insights. And until then, keep evolving and embracing change.